let's examine the cornerbacks position, and again, give us your post-game depth chart panel and your overall justification for the rankings. Let's start off with the WeAreSC editor-in-chief, Eric McKinney. Who's going to be the corners at the end of spring?
This is actually a tougher one than I thought kind of going into it. I've got three guys that I want to say. I can't see Christian Roland Wallace coming over and not being a starter by the end of spring. What the buzz you kind of hear about Damani Jackson and Jacoby Covington, two guys who flew under the radar a little bit last year, whether it was injury or just kind of not making the quick impact that you thought they would. Starting to hear, hey, they're right in there. They've kind of figured things out and they'll be there. So I think those three guys are really the guys to watch. I'll say Roland Wallace and Covington actually as potentially there. But if Damani Jackson puts it together and he's healthy and going, that guy's going to be on the field. He's going to play. And so you've got a guy, what Mekhi Blackman did last year, you're hoping that Christian Roland Wallace can do this year. I think Mekhi Blackman's a better athlete, better in coverage, all of that than Christian Roland Wallace. He's more physical and more built a little bit. But Damani and Jacoby Covington, I think are better overall athletes. Christian Roland Wallace has a ton of experience. And so that potentially is I think what gets him that veteran leadership and all that stuff that he brings in. I think gets him that. I want to see Josh Jackson Jr. healthy and on the field again. The flashes he showed really quickly at corner it feels like forever ago now that he moved over from wide receiver and played corner. He's a guy that I would love to see healthy and going again, because I think he has the talent to play corner and play it really well.
All right. Well, I always enjoy this particular part because I know Chris is a defensive back, so he's going to have a special take on it. So, Chris, who's your starters and why, and your backups?
I don't have a special take. My take is almost exactly the same as Eric's was. Christian Roland Wallace is probably going to start at one of these spots, and he does have a ton of experience. He came over to be a starter. I don't think the coaches bring him over if they don't expect him to play a lot. I also agree. Damani Jackson is going to be a starter if he's healthy. You don't get that combination of athletic skills very often. And when I say you don't, I'm not just talking about in college football. I'm talking about in the NFL. You don't get guys who have that size with those arms who run 10, 200 meters. You just don't get that. So if he's healthy, he'll play. I mean, that leaves three other, Sierra Wright, Jacob Covington, and Josh Jackson, all of whom can play. And I suspect one of those guys is probably going to move over to nickel. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I think one of those guys is going to get on the field somewhere else, maybe Covington. So I think those are the two starters, and those are the three guys pushing for time behind them.
Mark, who's your CBs?
I'm glad Chris segued into that. One of these guys might move to nickel, because I agree. I'm not sure it's going to be Jacoby Covington, though. My starters, I'm going to go with Christian Roland Wallace. Again, too much experience to come over from Arizona. You need somebody who is going to stick his nose in there and tackle. He's that guy. Opposite him, it's going to be Damani Jackson. If he was scheduled to start last year before the injuries started to creep up, if he's healthy now, I don't see why that wouldn't carry over into 2023. Behind him, you've got Jacoby Covington and Sierra Wright. Interesting, Sierra Wright, at least, I'm not sure where he is on that depth chart, because Joshua Jackson Jr., again, is a very good athlete. And if he's healthy, is Sierra going to be able to fight these guys off? Because these guys he's competing against, they're bigger. And I'm not talking lengthwise, I'm talking, physically. And I don't know if Sierra has the ability to get thicker. Maybe he does. The interesting guy I wanted to keep an eye on here is Maliki Crawford. You cannot teach 6'4", and if he's got that same type of twitch that Damani Jackson has, that's someone just to kind of keep an eye on. The guy who I think is going to move to nickel, if all these other guys can step up, meaning Jacoby Covington and Sia Wright and Joshua Jackson, I'd like to see Damani at that nickel spot. But we'll talk about that more.
Well, I think if Damani Jackson is healthy, and based on what we know, I think he starts. I also think Christian Roland Wallace starts for the obvious reasons that you guys have already talked about. My scrutiny is on Sia Wright, on just how consistently inconsistent he could be, how good he could be, and how average he could be. And I know that a lot of his life is filtered towards theater arts, and that has been questioned. I think a good question by maybe members of the coaching staff at some point in time. I think Jacoby Covington is kind of a wild card for me, that he could end up starting. Josh Jackson Jr.'s depth to me, anytime a guy changes positions. And I want to say there are players that even during the John McKay era changed positions and were better off for it, like Josh Jackson Jr. Has done. And we see that with other teams that SC's had that have had big success. So that's kind of how I see it.